Hello and welcome to Recruiter 360 TV with me, Toby Babb, and joined today by Michelle Carville. Michelle, thanks for coming in.
That's a pleasure.
So it's an exciting day for you. On the back of your first book, you've now got the second one that's launched today.
Yes.
I'm very honoured for you to,
Yes.
to come
Yes.
into this. Get Social.
Yes.
It is an amazing read. I
Thank
was
you.
very fortunate of you to send me over a pre-copy, and I loved it. There's so many different and good things that you can build into it and build up your brand. Tell us a little bit about your thinking behind it, what you do, and your story.
Okay. So I'm Michelle Carville. I position myself in my LinkedIn profile as I'm an author, an educator, and a social soul. And I'm a marketeer at root.
Yeah.
And for the last 15 years, I've been running my own agency, Carville Creative, and helping organisations with their marketing strategy and consulting at all different levels across a range of businesses. And when social started to come in, because we talk about these social technologies as if they're new,
Yeah.
but actually I think LinkedIn is celebrating its 15th year
Is
today.
it today,
I
is
saw
it?
something on LinkedIn today where some of their employees are actually...
It's no coincidence,
No,
is it?
and you know, they're not new, these technologies. So I started to explore those technologies as part of what we were doing with our clients, really, to say, hey, well, let's look at these channels, because back then they were really just another set of channels, and they are still a set of channels, but very sophisticated channels if you optimize them.
Yeah.
And I was very interested in them, as I mentioned in the book, about really the customer service side of things. That, you know, here now was were channels where the conversation between the consumer and the brand and the organisation could be direct, and organisations couldn't really hide behind the, phone us and come back to us and call answering systems. So I was really excited about them there. And so for the last probably 15 to 10 years, I have been looking at how we build and use social as part of effective communication strategies within organisations. And that led me to train quite a lot of people, because people were saying, hey, well, we don't know much about these channels. Could you come and help us with that? And okay, so I started training. And then when you're training organisations, you start to hear what's going on and what the real challenges are and what the real problems are. And I kept thinking, well, here's a solution. And a lot of those solutions are grounded in, good business strategy and good marketing strategy. And so I was advising, you should write a book, so that's where the business of being social came about. And that was very much a handbook, a very practical book for businesses to take and to learn about what to do, how to start.
Yeah, it's quite instructional, isn't it?
It's very instructional.
Yeah.
Get Social came about to answer that question, because what I started to realize was that when we were working with communications teams, marketing teams, and a lot of people that came to me and a lot of teams that I was training in organizations were comms teams, marketing teams, PR teams, it would become very apparent that they could almost only go so far, and there wasn't really buy-in with the C-suite, with the leaders. And it was very much, the view of, well, you keep social in a bubble and it goes over here in marketing and comms. And it wasn't really about, let's look at how you can really plug social into this organization and understand how it can really assist in many other ways. Yeah. So, and so I wanted to really talk to that audience about, well, this is what you could do. And then what started to happen, as I did more and more talks around that, was there was a lot of people, there was a few people that came to me and said, I don't know this stuff, and I'm a bit old for this.
It's very easy, isn't it?
And I don't really, this isn't my world. I didn't grow up with this. Well, it wasn't my world. I didn't grow up with this. So, and there was a lot of apparent fear, you know, as to what if I get out there and I mess it up, or this is just going to take so much time, and where's the ROI in doing this, and why would I do that? So I felt that really Get Social, we needed a book, or we needed some education around how it matters for leaders, and how it can really help from, you know, not just the organizational perspective, and leaders understanding that actually there's quite a lot we can be doing with social technologies across the business, and getting it and understanding it, but also the role that they play, if they want to, as part of that brand.
Yeah.
That actually the consumer is becoming increasingly interested in who's leading that business.
The story, effectively.
The story,
Yeah.
the story, you know, you are very much part of your story, and you're comfortable and confident and courageous enough to step out of the boardroom and be part of that story.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who aren't, or they may be curious, but they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And I actually coached a couple of people totally anonymously, and that was another kind of signal to me
Yeah, I
to
love this
say,
story, yeah.
you know, they had teams. Large teams, from what I could gather. I really didn't get into the detail of who they were, but from the conversations and me having to inquire and ask questions about what was going on, they didn't feel confident, or they were embarrassed to ask their own teams to help them and to show them that this, because really in their position they needed to know this stuff.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It kind of is, and it's, you know, when I say that story, so people do say to me, oh, it's extraordinary, but then other people say, well, I can completely understand that.
Yeah.
You know, so it just depends. So for me,
But it's part of the hubris of leadership sometimes around that, isn't it? Not being able to ask
Yeah.
downwards, rather than actually say, look, there's going to be people there who have that sort
Yeah.
of thing. Particularly when it's in, I mean, you talk about it there as an age thing, or I'm too old for this, or whatever it goes. But so who are the generation who are doing it? I mean, there's some. I think it was in the book, wasn't it, where you talk about the number of people who are millennials will be working in
Yes,
2030. It's
yeah.
like 75% of the
yeah,
workforce.
absolutely, absolutely.
So it's got to be about engagement, right?
It's got to be. It's got to be about engagement. And you know, I was writing a piece as part of the launch for an HR magazine, and around people management specifically. And they were saying, oh, but a lot of the people at that, you know, they're not comfortable with these technologies. Well, then get comfortable with these technologies, because these technologies are not new.
Yeah.
And it isn't. It's like saying I'm not comfortable with communication.
Yeah.
You know. But that's part of your whole business essence.
Yeah.
So that was why I felt I needed to write the book. I felt that, you know, it was addressing the fear factor. It was addressing the, ooh, where do I go? And I'm embarrassed and I don't really know who to turn to factor. It was addressing that I'm curious, you know, about what's going on in my organization. I don't really know about it, but I'm starting to feel I should know about it. So it's kind of multi-faceted from that perspective as to who it speaks to. But my real why is about educating and equipping leaders, or anybody who needs to hold a space in the thought leadership landscape to really have the confidence and the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it does that really well. And I would like to think that a lot of this sort of stuff is something I've spent a long time studying now. But the fact is, and what this book does for me is to give you a real sort of strategy around how to do it. Sometimes you can fall into it and you do this, that, and you sort of flow with the whole thing.
Yes.
But the strategy is an important part of what you're dealing with, and it goes through to your 90-day plan and everything that's encased in the book here. Tell me a little bit about content strategy, about social strategy, about actually seeing that as a thing.
As a thing, yeah. So and I think you're so right there, Toby, in as much as, you know, just to go back there, that some people do just dive in and get going, and I've seen that a lot over the years with the people I've trained, organizations. And when I say, you know, and they'll say, well, we've got our content plan, and I'll say, great, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
Really exciting stuff coming up there. Why is that? What does that relate to? You know, how does that align with the objectives of the business? And sometimes they can answer that question and say, well, you know, that's aligned in this way because we've actually got this event and it's all about the launch and these people are going, so it all fits. But often it's just a great idea that seems like it's going to be a bit of fun, but it's actually so far removed from any kind of corporate or strategic message and alignment that it's almost, you know, why do people do golf umbrellas? Because that's what the marketing team say you should do, you know, and it's like, okay, well, what's the objective of the golf umbrellas? Do you know, is that it's the same kind of thing in a way. And so I felt that, you know, strategy needs to, if there isn't an objective to why you're doing something and you can't justify that, then you really have to ask why you're doing it. And that's what is often missing in the strategy. So that's why I've built strategy into this, in as much as, you know, it's like anything. You don't just dive in and start doing it and come up with some great groovy ideas. We could do that, and that could be really interesting. But that's when you start to get into the problems of, well, where's the return on investment and how is this helping the business? Probably the Wetherspoons effect there, actually, you know, to a degree. But when there's a very clear strategy and you know exactly that each person that you want to be doing this is doing it for a reason, and they clearly understand why they're doing things, and there's planning and there's research that's been done and there's analysis before you actually dive in and engage, well, that makes it so much more, you know, effective and robust.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's about who's your audience, and that whole buyer personas and such like, and getting that sort of stuff right.
Yeah, you got to know that stuff.
And that's where your ROI comes from.
Yeah.
ROI will always be one of the questions that people put in that, and it will be the same with marketing and such like. Tell me a little bit more about your thoughts around ROI and how this actually sort of. Because there's some quite compelling stuff there you have on it about some of the leaders who you're talking to and about how they're outperforming the marketplace.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's more and more studies. I mean, the way I see ROI very basically is that, you know, if you don't know where you're heading, how do you know you've got there? And very often that's what I see in a lot of social strategy. You know, it's we're doing this and it's a case of, for what end? You know, what is the end point? Because that's what you're going to measure. And what with regards to the ROI as to what I saw when I was doing these studies, they've been doing these studies around, and it's come out of Capgemini. I think PwC have done a study. There's the Digital IQ study that happens every year, and they're looking at the effectiveness of organizations. I also, that are doing social. I also liaised with a really wonderful man, Roland Deezer, at the Drucker School of Management. And he's working on a piece of research which is again looking at social literacy and how leaders, digitally leaders, you know, socially literate leaders and organizations are performing from a return on investment perspective. Are they outperforming? Their studies show that those organizations that have progressed, so banking has moved dramatically into the digital technologies, social technologies. Those organizations, maybe manufacturing where they haven't, there's a really big gap between performance of those engaging and those not engaging. And that's looking at a very, you know, at a very macro level, but it starts to translate down. And when I was reading those studies, you know, I'm reading them thinking, well, of course. But, you know, I think it's when organizations and leaders and those that are maybe skeptical about ROI, or people saying, oh, it's a waste of time, we could pull out of this and we're not going to lose any market share, we could be doing, you know, this. It's often about, well, look, the tools are there, but if you're not using them effectively and you've not got them strategically aligned with objectives and you're not plugging them into your organization to really help that organization, you know, be driven and be optimized, then you're not going to get the results.
Yeah.
You know, so it goes back to my, if you don't know where you're getting, how you're going to get there. You've got to have that absolutely clear, and you've got to then justify it at every level as to, so we're doing that for that reason, we're doing that for that reason, and you're going to play around a little bit with that. You know, you're going to do some stuff and you're going to think, whoa, that was great, or that's made a difference, I wonder why. There's going to be some stuff that isn't as effective. Okay, well, we won't do that again.
Yeah.
So
that's analysis and feedback and all that sort of thing, isn't it? There's so many tools and information that comes back into that sort of thing. You've got to effectively take, you know, and I think that's a theme through this, isn't it? Take what the feedback tells you and what your customers and your clients and your target markets are telling you to do.
Yeah.
John Legere, who you talk about, CEO of T-Mobile, in this, is very much the case of saying, look, through this sort of thing, his customers have told him the strategy of the business. From when that comes from.
I mean, he puts the Un-carrier model that they are, you know, now revolutionising that whole industry with, down to listening, you know, to his audience.
That's what they said,
yeah. And he just wouldn't have had that ear, you know, to the ground, and social enables him to have that. But actually, every leader that I interviewed, without exception, talked about the importance of listening. And it's one, you know, anybody who knows me, my friends, you know, my colleagues in the social space, I say, oh, don't talk to her about not listening, you know, because it's been my mantra for such a long time that, you know, social is used a lot for pushing messages out. You know, it's used a lot for promotion. And you know, if you think about where it fits in many organizations, it's the marketing team, it's the comms team. But actually, it's way more powerful when it's used for listening and tuning in and really understanding. So, you know, that's going to help across every part of the organization, you know, from listening about research and development, listening in about HR and recruitment, you know, from a people management perspective, the listening.
The trends in your marketplace, what's happening, where the hot points are. It tells you the story of what's happening.
It does. And I love the way that Brian J. Dunn, he's the former CEO of Best Buy, and he was actually, you know, I was following him for quite a long time, because he was probably one of, apart from Richard Branson, the only other CEO that was really out there talking, and for many years, you know, I'm talking 10 years ago, he was kind of out there. And he says, you know, listening, it's just directionally. It may not be statistically accurate, but it is enough of a steer. It's directionally, you know, enough of a steer that it gives you enough to think,
well, it gives you more than just a gut, doesn't it?
I need to pivot here, you know.
It informs your gut.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, the listening aspect, the listening piece is often underutilized in, and particularly at a strategic level.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
The other thing that's quite interesting, and I think probably what prompted the book as much as anything else, as you've just said, is the confidence people have to get into this sort of thing. What am I going to say? Are people going to like me? Is it going to be interesting?
Yep.
Where do I start? All this sort of thing. What are some of the gems that you can share with us about that? Because it's the paralysis that sort of costs people in some of this, isn't it?
It does. And you know, you're right, paralysis and overthinking it, and thinking that actually they have to become some kind of personality, you know, and put on all of these masks. Actually, the reality is removing the masks. You know, it's actually just being Toby, just being Michelle, just being John Legere. You know, it's actually it's that courage to be authentic. You know, we keep the authentic self. You know, I know
he certainly does that.
It's a bit, it's a bit overused, but actually, it's you know, that's what you need to get to, and that's what really connects people. So as part of being that leader, you know, it's about connection, and it's about building trust. And to build trust, you've got to get people to know you and like you. And the minute that you're not being yourself, that becomes very obvious and very, you know, it's not very transparent, and it blocks that connection. You know?
And this is one of the areas that I'm really interested in about all this, because it's that authenticity I think is absolutely essential.
Yep.
And I think you should always try and be yourself, and that's the message you should push out, and it's the confidence to deliver that sort of thing to it. Some social media, when it comes to brand and personal brand, and then the personal brand linking with the company brand, etc., always seems a little bit contrived, and you hear about personal brand teams and this also, even down to and I really actually like a load of what he's doing. But Steve Bartlett, as a for example, and he, I saw him introduce his personal brand team at one sort of stage, and to me that almost veered across to someone who I feel comes across as quite authentic, that suddenly felt a little less so within that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts on personal brand. I know I haven't structured a question there.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
You know.
My thoughts. So, I suppose it's as I mean, we were talking earlier about the Victor Kiam.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I was so
Yeah.
you know, I love the business so much, but the product so much, I bought the company type of thing. And I think there's something.
Which just it sticks with you.
It sticks with you.
On,
and it's kind of the Richard Branson thing, isn't
Yeah.
it? You know, and we were talking about Elon Musk,
Yeah.
and, you know, people aren't necessarily following Tesla, but they're interested to hear what he's got to say.
Yeah.
You know, Apple, it's not necessarily about Apple, but people are following what Tim Cook's got to say.
Yeah.
You know, so it's those leaders that are there. And do they have a personal brand team, or are they just talking as they are?
Yeah.
So I think there's something more authentic about just being. Now, what I'm saying there is it doesn't mean not getting help with your content, as I mentioned in the book.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't mean about not learning how to do social properly and how to become authentic, you know, and feel confident and comfortable to be authentic. But if it's all a bit PR'd, you know, and it's a bit overworked, then you've just said it, Toby, really, that it becomes obvious that it's a bit PR'd and a bit overworked and that there's a PR brand team there. Now, if that's what the impression you want to put out there, then fine, you're all good.
Yeah.
But if it isn't, and that is starting to run away with it, then you've got to kind of drag it back to, hang on a minute, this is just about me and the work that I do, the experience I have, the voice that I share, whether that's internally to my teams and my employees and my colleagues, or indeed to our outside, you know, to all the stakeholders, my customers, my partners, my investors, whatever that looks like. That's the authentic piece. If it's all starting to look promotional and overworked, then it can start to be a bit, you know, it doesn't look great, does it?
Yeah, no. So if you were to give someone advice who's just thinking about doing this and suffering from that paralysis, and they're thinking about the content to start shooting little videos, or to start blogging or vlogging or whatever, you know, medium they wish to choose.
Yep.
What sort of advice do you give people on that?
I think you know, I say look at what you've done in the last 72 hours.
Yeah.
Okay? Start with looking at what you've done in the last 72 hours. Because in the last 72 hours, you will have given advice, you've probably been in a meeting, you've probably made some decisions, you know, you may have learnt something, you may have taught something and educated somebody. There will be content. All of that is content, and it's all great stuff, and it's all real stuff, and it's authentic stuff. And then it's just thinking about, well, you know, that keynote I gave was quite amazing, you know, that the other day at the thing. I could share that, and there's lots of valuable messages in there that are useful for both internal and external. That meeting we had yesterday morning, and, you know, the piece of advice I gave to my team to either inspire them or educate them or to hold them back or whatever it was, that there was quite a bit of learning in there. The frustration that I had the other day, you know, and I had to really kind of keep it together, but actually my frustration, I actually learned a little bit about that. You know, so there'll be things that happen. If you think about your last 72 hours, there's probably stuff that you think, I could write 10 things down already and I've got my content down for the next 10 weeks
Yeah.
if you're doing something one a week.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just those ideas. So I think sometimes we overthink it.
Yeah,
We
I
think,
agree with that completely.
yeah, we think that content, you know, people want to know the real stuff. Why do you think people watch reality TV?
Yeah.
You know, and they want.
I mean, that's exploded, right? As
It's
well.
exploded because people just want the authentic. What's going on?
Yeah.
You know, who would have believed that would make? You know,
Well, that's effectively, you know, the whole advance of YouTubers, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same sort of
Yeah.
thing. Why do people viewing in their millions to
Yeah.
look at people doing it? My daughter, my youngest daughter, will sit there and watch people playing with toys
Yep.
and all this
Yep.
this sort of stuff,
Yep.
because I think that is where
Yep.
the world comes from,
Yeah,
isn't it?
I mean, I've got a 12-year-old, and similarly, she's really into art, and she watches all these YouTubers
Yeah.
doing art.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, but she's learning actually. You know, it's
Yeah.
quite educational. But she doesn't watch TV. You
Yeah.
know, TV's like, oh no, you know, but YouTube.
Yeah.
So and I think, why is that? These are real people
Yeah.
just doing their stuff,
Yeah.
saying it as it is, it's authentic, and people can connect with that. When you know it's a big overproduced and they're acting, it can still be entertaining,
Yeah.
but it isn't authentic.
And that's when they start to engage with the brand, because they engage with the people. We talk about trust never being lower in brands, in businesses,
That's right.
at any
It's
sort of
all-time
stage
low. Yeah.
in history.
Yeah,
So to actually be able to go out there and engender that trust from being real with people
Yeah.
is an incredible way of doing it.
absolutely, 100%, 100%. And you know, trust is about if you're a leader and you want people to follow the leader and be part of that brand story, and be advocates and ambassadors for that brand, whether that's internally with your own team, you
Yeah.
know, your own team, you've got to
Yeah.
think about what you're saying to them as well. You're
Especially with international offices and
absolutely, you know, so it's, you know, that's one of the things that you often see John Lejeune doing, is giving shout outs to his team all over the world,
Yeah.
you know, because
Yeah.
he's not going to get to talk to them
Yeah.
like you and I can sit in an office, or
Yeah.
you can sit in an office with your team and speak to them every day. So it's just as important that, you know, that connection is there,
Yeah.
because that is what
And that's
engenders
how
the
people
trust.
know people. I mean, I think
Yeah.
about it. I look at, you know, when I meet people who I've met or seen or followed on social media, and
Yep.
you actually meet them for the first time, and you already know those sort of people, and that's the beauty of this sort of thing,
It
isn't
is.
it? It's people know you before they met you.
Yeah, and you're building relationships,
Yeah.
you know, and you can. There are some brilliant relationships that I've developed through social, you know,
Yeah.
with the first book, with the second edition of the first book, with this book. The majority of people that I reached out to, that I connected with, not just the people I interviewed, but you know, the researchers, a lot of the research stuff to allow my you know, me to publish their research. I had to contact them and I did that all through social, and they're all rooted. You know, I hope this book's great. Well done, Michelle. I don't know. I haven't met them, but I feel like I know them.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's
Yeah.
a real authentic connection, even though I've never physically met them.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's an amazing thing.
it is an amazing thing,
Yeah.
and I think if you can just see the social technologies for what the social technologies are, and let's face it, everything is now digital. Everything that we do, these social technologies are a component of that digital transformation. They're not going away.
Yeah.
You know, all we're seeing is more digital coming into the space. You know, we've got augmented reality, AI, you know,
Yeah.
cars that talk to us, self-driving. You know, it's all moving on, and the way, therefore, we connect. I mean, human connection, sitting down with somebody, you know, and having a conversation will never, hopefully, be removed from the equation. But you can still have those same connections.
It's putting the two things together, isn't it? Man and machine coming together,
Yeah.
coming together and working closer with it. And the people who I think who best run towards that are the ones who are best equipped for success in the future.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, social technologies allow for a connection that that you know, at the moment in organizations, we can be very siloed. You
Yeah.
know, we have that department, you have that department. These technologies are allowing lots of different people, you know, to start to talk and collide.
Collaborate,
And
understand.
collaborate, yeah.
Yeah.
And get to know one another.
See each other's viewpoints,
Yeah.
everything like that,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
And have a connection,
Yeah.
and an ongoing conversation and continuous conversations. And you can really harness that for innovation, for collaboration, like you say,
Yeah.
you know, and for connection. So, yeah, so that's, you know, there's just some of the things. And as a leader, it's all relevant, you know, whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
whether it's about your organization and understanding, wow, actually, I never really thought about the technologies like this. And actually, it might encourage them to want to get involved.
Yeah, yeah. Michelle, look, it's an amazing thing that we could be talking about.
I know, we could go on and on and on.
For ages and ages and ages. But I love your mission, and
Thank
you're
you.
effectively there trying to make the world more social, to make leaders more social,
Yeah.
and get this sort of stuff. If you're sat there and you have a leader in front of you who's umming and ahhing about this, or someone who's you know, in a management position, a leadership position, someone who's there and looking to drive their brand forward, what one bit of advice would you give them?
What one bit of advice would you
And I've
give them?
sprung this on you. I know
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
question.
I'd say read the book.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Read the book. There you go.
I concur.
Yeah, you know, I would say educate yourself before you make those decisions
Yeah.
about not wanting to be part of it, and
Yeah.
speak to your teams, speak to other CEOs that
Yeah.
are doing it. You
Yeah.
know, that was one of the reasons I really wanted to get the voice of others doing it, not me saying, hey, you could do this, you could do that. You know, others that are doing it, encouraging other leaders and saying, it's crazy that you're not part of this,
Yeah.
because if you just use this as part of your toolbox, it really opens up a lot of opportunity.
That comes on to a really, really relevant point of this. Insofar as I was amazed at the sort of breadth of people who you're talking to about it, and it's from the super corporate through to the more creative, isn't
Yeah,
it? I mean,
absolutely.
you talk to you know, to T-Mobile, through to PwC, through to all
Yeah.
these different sort of professions into it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be constricted by your industry, right?
Certainly not.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly not. I mean, and it's interesting. You know, there's a chap that contacted my agency, and he really wants to get himself out there, and he's quite a specialist, unique practitioner, and he was saying, you know, I think this is going to be good. Is it going to? I was like, yes.
Yeah,
you know, you don't have to be part of a big organization, but if you are, it's going to help. You know, but if you aren't, if you are an individual with a real mission and you need to get your voice out there, it's going to help there as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, it is diverse. It's being social, you know, is for everyone.
Yeah. Well, there you go. What a great quote to end
Yeah.
to end on.
Yeah.
Michelle, it's been wonderful talking
That's a
to you.
pleasure,
Thanks so
Toby.
much for
Thank
coming in,
you.
especially when it's such a busy day.
Yeah.
With the release of this book, which everyone's got to go and read.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing all your thoughts. Thanks for writing the book. It's definitely helped me.
Thank you.
With everything we're going to be doing moving forward as well. You'll see that over social
Excellent.
channels.
Yes.
And thanks for coming in. Thanks to everyone over there for watching us as well. And we'll see you soon on another episode of Recruiter 360 TV. Michelle, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.